like runway lights to insects that are seeing the UV, seeing the color underneath the UV. Come on, kitty kitty. Are you going to come into the lecture? All right. Between our two synergid cells, we're going to have our true egg. The true egg is in red. The remaining structure here is going to be one cell that has two nuclei, and these are called the polar nuclei. So one of the things that will happen at fertilization is at fertilization, the sperm will land on the stigma. Now, I'm going to draw my pollen with the sperm inside as a black dot on top of my stigma. We're going to assume that this pollen is of the same species as the rest of this carpal structure. Assuming that it is, then this pollen grain will be allowed to germinate. Let's say that this carpal layer came from a lily that Towhee seems to want to chew on. Let's say this carpal layer came from a lily, but this pollen came from the rose. This happens all the time with flowers. Bees and other pollinators don't care about whose pollen they take to which flower. And so one flower could have lots of different species of pollen on it. And so the plants have to control which pollen is going to fertilize the egg. And so what's going to happen is there will be chemicals secreted by the stigma that will suppress and stop pollen from growing unless it's of the same species. So this is our lily carpal layer. We're going to assume that that is lily pollen and that the stigma is going to allow that pollen grain to start to germinate. Now our pollen grain has three separate cells. One cell is going to grow the pollen tube. And the wild thing about pollen tubes is that they've got to grow through the stem, they've got to grow through the ovary, and they've got to connect with the ovule, and they've got to connect with the ovule at the correct place so that another sperm can move down and fertilize that egg. So when we look at the ovule, this is where our synergid cells become so important. These synergid cells are going to guide that pollen tube in. It's almost like they're saying, come on, come this way. I used to work at the airport, so we used to marshal in the airplanes. I always think of the synergid cells as being like the marshalers going, nope, nope, a little bit to the right, okay, straight forward, a little bit to the left, all right, coming, and connected. Once that pollen tube connects, both sperm move down. One sperm combines with the egg. As soon as that combination has happened, mitosis, cell division, divide, start to grow and grow. It's going to grow the baby dormant plant. It's going to grow that embryo. Super exciting. The other pollen is going to combine with the polar nuclei to make cells with triploid DNA. When we say triploid cells, what we mean is that they have 3 copies of each chromosome.